Yeah, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the TryPod live with Winnie and Clarkey. My name's Dane from Clarkey's Rugby League column, joined every week by my co-host Winnie, who is the founder of TryPod. We're here tonight to recap everything that was round 7, recap our best bets, and talk about every single game through the round. We're live now on Instagram. G'day to everyone that's joining on Instagram, and g'day to our regular TryPod family over there on Facebook and on YouTube. Another crazy round of footy. I mean, probably a tough go if you're a punter, but I tell you what, speaking from a footy perspective, it was a pretty entertaining round with some pretty cool results there. We are live, so go ahead and tell us in the comment section, how did you go this round? What were some of your best bets? What were some of your bad beats or some bets you just got outright wrong? But on that note, let me hand over to my co-host, Winnie. How are you going, mate? And recap our best bets for this round, if you don't mind, please.
On the note of outright wrong bets, sorry, I just realized I'm not wearing uniform. I forgot it doesn't really zoom in too much. I guess I'm wearing blue. I've had the Blues this weekend. It was the blue teams that dominated today because we've got some good footy games, but not really today. We've got a couple of mismatches. And actually, today was a great afternoon for me, and I really needed it because Winnie's Kitchen got up again, $9 odds, Cherry scoring. The Bulldogs never look like losing, laying a very small number in my multi, but where they win by 30 points. But it doesn't save me from a horrible weekend. 1 and 3 on best bets, just 14 and 14, which is absolute mediocrity. And when you risk 10 to win 9, that's not making money either at 14-14 so far. 3 really bad losing bets. I laid the points with New Zealand, and obviously they're thumped by St. George. Then I laid the points with Para, who capitulated like you wouldn't believe second half against the Dolphins. And I also copped a loss with the Raiders, catching points in at Suncorp, and it's 28-0 at halftime. Now, when it comes to these type of bets, in some ways, it doesn't matter if you lose by 20 or you lose by 2 in terms of profit loss, but it is a terrible reflection on me too when the bet doesn't just lose but gets blown out of the water. So I was really hurting in a dark place. Get one back today with the doggies getting up and winning the multi, but still, I don't want to rehash like why I thought they were good bets because I already kind of shared exactly why in the preview. I'll just share what I thought of each game. But it's fair to say coming out of this weekend, I have a lower opinion of New Zealand, Parramatta, Canberra. And that means I got it wrong going in because I don't like to change my opinion on teams too much, but I misjudged them. I overrated those teams. And I probably got a bit more respect for the Dragons, the Finns, and Brisbane, who I've disrespected, so that's where I just put my head up and say, I didn't do good enough. I got it wrong. Just one other point in terms of the bets and how you might judge them. Like 4 out of 4 bets this weekend, we did beat the closing line again. It does not count for much, but long-term, I monitor it. I know that people will say, well, you lost 3 of them, so who cares? The thing is, I think it is notable because we played New Zealand, they were 5.5 everywhere on Tuesday. I give it as a best bet. It moves to 6.5, 7.5. It never comes back. Moving through 6 is a key number. So what I'm getting at is if that line was fair at 5.5, or if in fact the Dragons were actually the right side, the market is a pretty efficient place. But there's no big money coming back the other way against my best bet. Same with Para. We took them at the market 6.5. It closes 8.5. So we're beating the line and nobody's really hammering the other side thinking that we're wrong. And I know it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because TryPod best bets have an influence on the market. So I'm not expecting big accolades because we're beating the market. But it is curious to me that getting line value has counted for very little.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think we even said that on the preview show a number of weeks ago. You can get the line right and you can have it move in your favor, but it doesn't mean anything if you're going to lose. So, look, a little bit unlucky this round at times, but I think after this round, Winnie, I don't raise too many teams up or down based on where I expect them to be in September this year, but I do change them in my view of consistency. And that plays a huge role in betting when you can't really back a team to be consistent unless there's factors in your favor. But I think we'll get to that when we go through game by game. We'll start with Thursday night. Storm defeated the Sydney Roosters 18 points to 12. The line coming into this one was a pick'em. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure of much in this one. I leaned the way of the Roosters. I thought they would win. One thing I was sure of, though, is that we'd get high-quality football. And I think I got that wrong too, because we had a sin bin, a combined 17 penalties, 24 errors, and 75 missed tackles. So I probably didn't even get that prediction right here. The Roosters, they were poor. Like, yes, they were missing Sam Walker. For their fans to turn around and say they were robbed all over social media, I think that's crazy. Like, the better side won. The Storm had 6 line breaks to 1. The Roosters just didn't create enough opportunities for themselves. And to be honest, if the Roosters didn't have such great defense, that scoreline could have been a lot higher. So that is a positive to take away from this. If you are the Roosters, the scoreline could have really got away with you with those 6 line breaks, but the scrambled defense was awesome. So credit to the Roosters as far as that much is concerned. For the Storm, Winnie, what I always say, write them off at your own peril. Like, every time there's a reason why you should be tipping the other side and a reason the Storm should lose this week, they somehow just find a way. And this isn't just this year. This isn't just last year. This is over a decade now. So it's absolutely no coincidence. I don't know what's in the water down there in Melbourne. Only concern I've got for the Storm, though, Winnie, this again was a tight margin of victory. We've mentioned on the show before, their average win margin this year is 3.6. This time last year, their record was worse, but their average win margin was 11 flat. So they are winning by much tighter margins this year. What about yourself, though, Winnie? How did you see the round 7 opener between these sides?
An old adage comes to mind. I don't know if it applies to Melbourne, but they say great teams don't win close games. Great teams avoid close games. And Melbourne's not avoiding the close games, but I think they are pretty damn good. Yeah, you called it a pick 'em. It essentially was. But when we previewed on Tuesday, Roosters were a slight favourite. And we thought, well, Walker's out of the HIA protocol, so he probably slots in. And then it was confirmed, no, he's had symptoms ongoing. He's out. So then Melbourne's became a slight favourite. So at that point, I probably thought, for the similar reasons to worrying about the Roosters a week ago and saying they would have lost to Newcastle, you've got a bit of spine disruption there, even though Teddy did come back. And it's funny, Teddy comes back and it's like a downgrade because Manu, they don't get the same out of Manu as they do when they unleash him at fullback. I don't know about you. I was entertained in this game, actually, even though it might not have been the prettiest. Look, Robbo has a point with it's 3 tries to 2, and the Storm did score 2 contentious tries. So one is Big Nelson makes his return and there's a bit of a driver and you can't do it. You can't push your player forward to score, even though he probably realized a split second later. And then another, what do they call it? The key word, the buzzword this year, disruptor. Maybe there was one on Teddy that allowed the Storm to score the decisive try, but it had the same point. Even if you want to say those were contentious, Melbourne had way more chances. You can say the Roosters scrambled well, but also thought Melbourne just bottled a couple and as you said, 6-1 line breaks. Melbourne was the better team. Another takeaway, Munster does not look himself to me, but Jerome Hughes was unreal, probably best on ground.
Yeah, I had Jerome Hughes as my MVP. Love that comment on Facebook from James McPherson. Not relevant to this game, but he says Titans have been avoiding games all season. When he did
avoiding close games all season.
Avoiding close games.
Yeah, see. So then you are a great team by that measure.
But by that measure, we are the absolute goats of the NRL. No, you're right though. That was still an entertaining game. That's
actually not true though. The last 2 Titans games have been as close as they could be. But we'll get to that.
We will. We'll get to that one when we get to the Saturday games. Game 2 of the round was Friday night, and the Dragons defeated the Warriors 30 points to 12, despite the line being set -6.5 against the Warriors. And for me, my question is, have the inconsistent Dragons turned a page? Because they hadn't won back-to-back this year. That had some really great performances and some really bad performances. So that is a question mark coming out of this one, because a huge win over the Warriors, it is amazing for their season with where it was currently at. You know, you'd probably say they'd been a little bit behind the pack, but a win over the Warriors does legitimize them and bring them further into their, I guess, middle of the field runners here. I don't think I've seen the Warriors look that bad, like dating all the way back to round 1 last year, I think. And, the thing that really stood out to me when he was Sean Johnson screaming at RTS when he touched the ball off the goal line dropout when it didn't go 10 meters. Now, naturally, they're grown men. There's testosterone on the footy field. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to yell at times. Whatever it is, what it is. But SJ is not a player that loses his cool, and he's not a player that loses his cool to such a respected, influential, and senior figure in that side in Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. So for me, although that wasn't a part of the game per se and it didn't impact the result, it summed up how rattled the Warriors are. No footy fan expected this result, and neither did the Warriors. Long term, I don't have any question marks over the Warriors' credentials. I still think they're good enough to be there in September. I think it was just one of those games. But it's interesting because if I'm going to say that, then how high do I raise the Dragons in my books? They're now 3 out of their last 4. And if you remember, their last loss was to the Knights, and it wasn't a regular game. It was in torrential rain. So that's 3 wins 3 wins out of their last 4, not including that one of the Sea Eagles. They seem pretty good. Tigers, they've improved. And now the Warriors at home. So it's realistically, it's a pretty nice run here by the Dragons. What did you think about this one? I guess no doubt it was a tough watch with the best bet, though.
Trouble in paradise, you might be suggesting. Yeah, look, I was perfectly comfortable going in. And as I say, like, you lay 5.5 and it closes 7.5. You get through that key number. And to me, New Zealand were clearly better than St. George and dominated the first 20. And Sean Johnson scores a walk-in try. But the issue was straight away that New Zealand needed to capitalise on that momentum and territory to a higher tune than 6 points. And I thought St. George was so tough to stay in the game and keep repelling New Zealand. And when the match did turn, it turned dramatically. I mean, the Warriors then give up 4 tries and a 2-point field goal, if you don't mind, in a 16-minute period that started from late in the first half, where once the pendulum swung and Dragons got opportunities, Dragons took them. And to me, it's like, which team wants it more? You know, the Dragons were defending their line fiercely. When New Zealand had to defend their line, Ben Hunt scored a try where he palmed 2 people off. Like a desperate and good defense in a New Zealand of last year doesn't allow a try like that. So that pretty much summed up the night. So as I say, New Zealand gets blitzed. You know, it's punctuated by Lomax skying for a bomb to score in the first set of the second half, which really struck a huge blow. And I think I've said this before, like Lomax is playing as well as any winger. He goes close every game. If he's not scoring off a bomb or setting one up, he's that close every game, and sometimes multiple times. And when our best bet was on the line, of course, he come down with it. And the Warriors just looked stunned. I think they were shell-shocked that they couldn't believe that after having all the ball and being camped on the Dragons line, that suddenly they were down a try, down 2 tries, down 3 tries. Like, what's happening? We thought we were in control. Did 90 minutes last week sap too much energy? But, I mean, I knew that was the case going in. So it can't be an excuse. It goes back to me that the Warriors didn't have these defensive lapses a year ago, and that the Dragons are a tough out, especially at home. James Graham mentions as well that home advantage has been strong this season for a lot of teams.
Yeah, it does seem the home sides are definitely it's definitely a factor we might have to start considering future into our preview shows. But yeah, this is a game that the Dragons can really take momentum from and really take it to the Roosters on Anzac Day, which from recent memory is a game they have struggled in. And for the Warriors, they're back at home for their first ever Anzac Day in New Zealand. So they're going to want to reset and give their fans, you know, a special performance on a special day. So interesting.
Yeah, but they've got a really tough game, don't they? A really tough opponent coming across.
They do. We were maybe. We'll see how the Titans go in that one, but fingers crossed we can get our first win of the season. Game 3, this was the Friday night blockbuster. Dolphins defeat the Eels 44-16. And the line was set -6.5 against the Eels. This is absolutely insane for both teams. So for the Dolphins, let's look at this. They have just scored their highest ever score in an NRL game. And they were missing their coach who wasn't at the ground. They were at a ground they've never played at before. They were missing their best back row in Kafusi, their best prop in Flegler, their best outside back in Farnworth, and their outright best player in Hammer. Like, how does that happen, and how can you predict that? If someone predicted this sort of margin and performance, please buy me a lotto ticket. And for the Eels, I just genuinely can't remember the last time we saw a side outright quit. And that's not my assessment. That's what their coach said as much in the post-game press conference. So a really devastating performance by the Eels that, in my mind, actually has the potential to really derail their season. That's how bad it was. Especially, it doesn't get any easier. They verse Manly this week, who are going to be keen for revenge, and then they get a bye where they're no doubt going to need to reset at this stage, it seems. In the tough conditions of Darwin, Winnie, as we spoke about in the preview show, the most important thing is ball control and completing your sets. If you do that, you win. You start to build the snowball and it comes downhill and it just gets bigger and bigger and you fatigue that other side out. And it's just not normal conditions. I don't know if many people here have been to Darwin, but it is just a different world up there. And I can't imagine playing footy in it. The Eels had less errors than the Dolphins. And that's telling to where the Eels actually made the errors. And it was always in their own end of the half coming out. They knocked on after scoring points on 2 occasions and allowed the Dolphins to rebound and score in the next set or the set after. The telling moment for me and where this game went off the rails completely for the Dolphins actually was the decision to take the 2 points in the 45th minute. the message they sent to the Dolphins there subconsciously is that they wanted to win an easy way, not the hard way. Because the hard way is to continue to play there. And even if you don't get the points, you fatigue the Dolphins and you back your mentality that you're going to come over the top of them. Taking the two sent the wrong message, it seems, because they knock on the following set. Dolphins score and make it 6. Dolphins then score off the very next kickoff and make it 6, which is a 10-point swing in 2 minutes. That, for me, when he signaled the end of this game, the Eels put down the tools and left the job site. I am curious. Do you think I'm being too critical on the Eels, or did you see this one in a similar fashion?
Okay, I didn't have a big issue. I know it's been commented as well. I didn't have a big issue with taking the 2 at that moment, just because it's 8-4, get it to 10-4. I think most teams in the comp, that key, margin of when the lead is 4, take it to 6. When it's 6, maybe take it to 8. I think a lot of teams would take the points on offer. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. What I did hate is the fact that I'm a Finns fan, and that was like the best performance in club history, just about most points they ever scored. And I couldn't enjoy it for 1 second. That's what sacrifice I make, because I try and put the pod above my team. But we're all losers for that, because I bet against the Dolphins and it worked out just horrendously. And I'm just trying to figure out, where this went wrong, because on paper, Parramatta should have definitely outmatched the Finns. And you talk about those conditions being so different. Well, there's no excuse for Parramatta, who've played there like 9 times in the last 12 years. But it does remind me of 2 or 3 years ago, Para were like 10-point favourites against the Cowboys and lost by around 29 points, if you recall that one. So they've actually been ambushed and had their pants pulled down at this very ground before. So it really shouldn't have happened again. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that was at Darwin, unless I'm getting it wrong and that was like in Cairns. But in any case, the thing that made it even more cruel is, like the New Zealand game, we get a line move. Like, that line was pushing 8.5, 9.5. There's not a big bet back the other way, as if the Dolphins are the value. Like, if there's anyone out there that picked it, well done. But the market didn't indicate that. And like the New Zealand game, our team gets a strong start. Parramatta scores the first 2 tries. So they look switched on to me. The Finns have got new faces out there. If you were to tell me someone's going to win this game 44-16, I'll back Parra at any price early. But then Parra gives up the next 9 straight tries. I mean, and 1 in the first half, so it's 8-4. That's fine. Then, as I said, penalty goal, you're up 10-4. You know what's crazy? I had my same game. I went $16, and I'm not going to say it was close, but the legs, Penasini for a try, he scored. Parra to win the first half, they were in front. First half under 26.5 won. So it was 3 out of 3 legs. The only leg we needed was Eels to be first team to 30. And of course, the Eels gave up, with a half an hour to go. So it didn't occur. But like, you were writing $16 about the Eels to get to 30. So as much as, I'd copped it for that multi, like, it was in with a chance until the wheels completely fell off this Parramatta team. So I didn't have an issue when they took the 2. You said that was the moment you were worried. I tell you when I was worried. Jesse New gets a square-up try on his Tonga teammate, Penasini, 10-all. Okay, that's when the very next set, I mean, even then, I'm like, all right, look, half an hour to go. I think this is anyone's game. I wasn't thinking like, oh, geez, we're in trouble. But the very next set, the Cowboys are just rolling through the ruck. And it just looked like Parra had hit a brick wall. And I'm watching it going, Parra needs to aim up here. Like, you can just sense the energy has dipped. Like, I'm really worried. Like, they need to get their hands on the ball and make something happen, or this game is going to turn. Well, sure enough, the Dolphins score that set from halfway. Trey Fuller, who is a live wire, scores, puts them in front. Okay, you think that Parra might aim up now? No. The next 2 tries are both scored by Max Plath. Now, like, he's a good player, a great first grader. It's a bonus that the Dolphins have unearthed him. But some 13s won't score a try all season. You let the Dolphins 13 score 2 in 2 minutes. It just felt like the perfect storm of Parra dropped their gloves, and the Finns at the same moment smelt the blood in the water. Like, the Dolphins absolutely went for the kill. Like, you could see they were running it harder. They were shifting it because Parra didn't want to do any extra effort in defense, and the Finns were shifting it. They were offloading it. Then they were flicking it, and everything's coming off. And it was just a try blitz. And I am really impressed that the Dolphins could sense that vulnerability and then just be totally ruthless. Katoa is a real rising star, and he just absolutely pieced up Parramatta. And And I really wanted to hear in the press conference what Para's excuse, like what happened in that moment where they just all got depleted of energy. But Brad Arthur just gave the exact same answers after the loss against Canberra, where they had 40 put on them. He said, we don't want to do the tough stuff. We're a part-time footy team. I'm like, Gutho, I want to know a little bit more about why you gave up 8 tries in a 24-minute period, because I've never seen anything like it. And I think you're right as well, Clarkey, that the conditions, that when it's going against you, like it magnifies in Darwin. But I would have thought Para, being the stronger team, more experience, more continuity, more powerful, and being on top early, they had every right to finish stronger, and it went nowhere near that. So you absolutely question the mettle of this Parramatta team, who, I thought so much more highly of coming into the year. And last week, I thought they were quite impressive, beating the Cowboys, no Moses, but we saw what the Cowboys did this weekend. You take a little bit of shine off that win too. So I'd be majorly concerned as a Para fan, and as a Finns fan, I should be proud, but the best bet comes first, and the best bet got absolutely blown away.
And if you're a Para fan, I don't even think you look at this game and go, oh, but Mitchell Moses is still out, because the attitude coming back from the players when it went against them was so poor. It was something we've never seen before. And if we were to see this type of performance from the Eels again this year, I had them penciled in my top 4 as a preseason prediction. I'd write that off straight away and say that's no chance anymore if we ever see that sort of effort from the Eels again, who have now lost 3 straight in Darwin. Game 4, we opened up Super Saturday with the Panthers defeating the Tigers 22 points to 6. The line was set at minus 13.5 against Penrith. Probably the most predictable result of the round. I mean, Penrith cover the line against the Tigers side that tried, but was ultimately outclassed. And after the Tigers did score that first try, you kind of look back to Friday night and you're like, okay, is this going to be a super strange round? Is the upset on here again? But to the Panthers' credit, they do not concede another point after that try and conversion. The Tigers, I thought they did look for second chance opportunities, which is really important against the Panthers. They have such great defense that you need to disrupt that somehow. And the Tigers tried to through 11 offloads, but the execution was clearly off with 15 errors in their game also. And that is not going to help you at all against the 3-time reigning premiers. I don't feel too strongly about this game. I think the Tigers are a side that's going to continue to try to improve every week and find a level of consistency in their game. Whereas the Panthers, I fully expected them to win. They did win. They won without too much trouble. How did you see it? Did you see it any differently to that?
A little. First of all, I'll say the weekend could have been worse, because I really did, and I admit it, like I really considered Tigers plus 14.5. So like that would have really hurt too, because I thought the Tigers kept it closer than the final score. Like you're saying it was a pretty standard, comfortable win, but like it's 10-6 with 15 to go. And on top of that, I thought the Tigers got dudded in the first half with the most blatant professional foul you've ever seen of Schneider. Who did he dive? Oh, Olam, right? He dived an ankle tap Olam, who was running a support, who would have scored. And they challenged. The refs didn't see it live, but the Tigers challenged, and the bunker got to see it, which means they have even more time to make the right decision and can't figure out a professional foul. So they did give a penalty, but sin bin there, bad call. The weather was a bit wet, so it was a game dominated by the middles. Fish, who was in the news this week, he scores a try. I thought Isaiah Yeo was very dominant. And the Panthers actually did score those late couple of tries, cover the line, which was around 13.5, 14.5 just. And even then, the Tigers made a break right at the end, had a chance for the backdoor cover. But the story of the Tigers' day was their final pass couldn't stick. And the error count of 15 Tigers errors to 6, is the difference as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like when you come up against the Panthers, you need to have a 9 out of 10 game. The Tigers were probably at like a 7 out of 10, which by their current standards is awesome. Their fans can be happy and proud with it. They're going to continue to improve, but they're just not going to be able to topple the side like Penrith with a 7 out of 10 game. Not many sides will, with what we know about Penrith at this stage of their club. Game 5, Manly defeat the Titans 34 points to 30, and the line was set at minus 8.5 against Manly. I think footy fans would argue that they would agree with the argument rather that high-scoring games are quite often more entertaining than low-scoring defensive efforts. Now, sometimes that does change in Origin because the defensive efforts are so much more like rigid and tough and thrilling. But in a general NRL game, I know myself, I'd rather see a high scorer with plenty of action. So from a neutral perspective, I reckon this game would have been so fun throughout. But if you are a Titans or a Manly fan, myself being a Titans fan, with the amount of lead changes, it was chaotic. It was a roller coaster, and you just never felt confident or home in this one. In the end, Manly walk away with the 2 points, which is very important to their season as they, look to make a run into September. It wasn't their best performance, but at this stage of the year, take the 2, move on to next week, try to get revenge against the Eels, and getting the 2 points is the most important thing at the end of the day. On the other hand, as a Titans fan, now they've covered the line in their past 2 and they've competed very well, which is some positive signs of improvement there.
Past
Genuine
3,
signs.
if you include this
3.
weekend.
Yeah, so there's genuine signs of improvement there. But their defense was actually really strong here. They only missed 17 tackles and 4 ineffective, which is the lowest of their season by far in both categories. But unfortunately, it was the lapses in concentration that allowed 34 points to be scored by Manly, like tries before halftime. Tries with just basic missed tackles, stuff like that really, really hurt them. So they're an improving footy side, but Manly were far too good here. Well, I wouldn't say far too good. Manly were too good here. They got enough class across the park that, for the Titans, if you're going to have those inconsistent patches, players like Turbo and DCE are going to pick you apart, and that's exactly what they did. Now, I did watch this one at the Parramatta Leagues Club through the lens that we're impaired by about 10 beers before kickoff, Winnie. So tell me your sober version and account of this game, please.
So you love high-scoring games. You must love being a Titans fan because they usually are high-scoring. It's just whether you also can score with the opposition, which in this game you could. And I'll tell you right now, it's another game you should have won. Like, I think the Titans blew this game either side of halftime. The Titans are up 24-16, which, funnily enough, I think is the exact same score, 24-16, that you led Manly at home by a couple of years ago, only to come out second half and get about 7 straight tries put on you. I remember because I had a best bet in that game. But I think I had Titans first half, my best bet, so that was all right. But I thought, they're going to lead them by 8 at the break. The Titans kick a bit long. I think Manly gets a 7-tackle set. Manly gets the ball anyway, inside their 20, and there's a minute to go. And of course, Manly's going to try something. They're down 8, and you've got a bit of fatigue. And Manly shifts it. And I swear Foran read the play, and he rushed out of the line to try and jam it. Like, you've just got to be smarter than that. They need to try and jam something and shut something down. They were dead set less than 20 seconds in the game at that moment. Like, just slide. It doesn't matter if you give up yardage. The only thing you can't do is give up a try on the buzzer, which is what the Titans do. Then the Titans throw an intercept straight to Cooler, the last bloke that you want to have to turn and chase, 2 minutes into the second half. And those 12 points, I think he threw the game away in those 2 moments. And the final margin suggests the same, that you only lost by 4 points. You hit the lead again, but soon after that, made an error in your own red zone. And Bullimore, pretty simple barge over try. And it was interesting. This game had 64 points in the first 54 minutes. So if you do like points and like back and forth action, it was a game for you. But funnily enough, the final 25 minutes was scoreless. So it really was the fight for those 2 competition points. And the Seagulls were just able to hold on and hold you out. But although, as you say, the Titans, it was the team getting panned more than any team in the comp after round 3. They have covered the line 3 straight weeks. And that's often how it goes. Like, the ugliest team that nobody wants to back has been making money for you if you took them with the line. Obviously, up in Townsville, they did cover a big, 15, 16-point spread. Of course, covered in the heartbreaker in the nation's capital. And again, this line was like 7.5 or 8.5 as well, which the Titans stayed within. And as I'm telling you, could have another game that got away for them. And that's not even to mention the try before halftime, which I blame the Titans for. Pretty dodgy pass. I know when it's a full speed, you get away with forward pass. Like, it's probably a forward pass sub into Turbo, but just defend it and then you don't have to worry about that, Titans. And I just want to shout out Nicole, because not only did he hit his 2 out of 3, he had sub and he got Mulatalo today, which was nice, but he also picked Hamole to score on our show, who was too strong and unstoppable and did score. And that was Nicole's first hit for his weekly segment in our show, so he was pumped about that too.
Thank you very much, Nicole. By the smile on my face, you might be able to tell whether I did back those plays or not.
You couldn't have backed against your own team, surely.
No, I definitely wouldn't have bet on Olakwatu to score at all. Don't know if anyone noticed the nose rub there. Let's move to the next game. It was the Broncos v Raiders, and the Broncos get the job done 34-10. The line was set at -7.5 against the Broncos, and this was an interesting game for me coming into it. I touched on it in the preview. Initially, I preferred the Raiders, and I thought with the head start, that was an awesome price, given they did beat the Broncos in Suncorp last year whilst the Broncos were running hot. But at a second glance, I sort of thought their play style and the game plan that they're using this year doesn't quite suit it against a side like the Broncos. In the end, I don't think game plans ever really came into this because 20 minutes in, the Broncos were 18-0 and the Raiders were still stuck in the mud a little bit. And the Broncos had kind of run rampant with almost a point per minute. What was very smart of the Broncos in this game, I will say, is targeting the inexperience of the Raiders. They have a young winger in Xavier Savage and a teenage fullback in Chevy Stewart who came up with a combined 7 errors. And that's always going to hurt your side there. Raiders noticeably off in this one, I suppose you could say. Perhaps it was the 90 minutes they had in the previous week against the Titans. Was that an overlooked factor? I don't know, but one thing was just the form of Reece Walsh. And as you suggested to myself earlier today, he's kind of really hurt you with a couple of best bets in a row now. So how did you see this one?
Yeah, and I think I was just whinging to you because it's like, when I bet on Brisbane, they had Reece Walsh, but he got injured 3 minutes in and they didn't have a chance. And then when I've got against Brisbane, Reece Walsh has just lit the field on fire. So this game, line closes 7.5. I wouldn't say that proves 8.5 was a great bet. I think like the rain hammering down right as it was about to kick off also should have been in our favour and helped. Yeah. And like the previous 2 best bets, it was actually our team that got the good start. Like it was all Canberra first 10, 15 minutes. And it was Canberra that looked like they struck first. They were awarded the first try, but Hudson Young, when it rains, it pours. Like I needed a good start after a horrible Friday night. And when I saw that Hudson Young actually muffed the put down, and it's not 6-0 Canberra, it's 7 tackle set Brisbane, and they do score. It was either right off that set or off a repeat set. From getting that ball. And that was just Reece Walsh hitting a hole that he hits a hole faster than anybody else. There's a little bit of space. Like he can explode through it as well as laying on for others. Then the Broncos scored 2 more tries off drop bombs. And I know there was actually another dropped bomb that Selwyn Cobbo nearly scored. So I don't want to play the game of like, if this happened, maybe this, it was a big enough margin that I'll just say I underestimated Brisbane again. And Fogarty couldn't play the second half. He tore his bicep, which is very worrying. And Luke's commenting, mentioning that he played Canberra for the spoon as much as they've had a great start. Like if Fogarty's out, I don't quite see it, but I understand like the value play there. Again, Billy Walters gets the ball on 5th tackle, just kicks for himself and scores. But where was Chevy Stewart for that? It's not lucky just because Brisbane was always scoring on 5th tackle and usually involving a kick. Everybody is scoring off kicks and on 5th tackle these days. So you've got to be able to defend it. Walsh scores again. Oh, sorry, did Walsh? Walsh might not have scored the first try, but it was Walsh going through a gap and laying on the first try. But then Walsh definitely did score the one before half time. So 28-0, it's game over. Like, the Raiders had a couple of chances where it looked like they'd put Savage away down the wing, but he just lost it on 2 different occasions. But I really want to say Brisbane's playing unbelievable to me. Like they play positive, like it was wet conditions. They'll still promote the footy. They went down to Melbourne. They had no Walsh. They're still throwing it around. Reynolds is out second half. They still stay positive. They are a lethal team after turnovers. I feel like I've been unlucky because Brisbane scored fluky tries in that Melbourne game. They did score some lucky, like length of the field returns against the Dolphins, and they scored some tries off drop bombs in this game. And I'm like, man, like they're getting handed some of these tries, but they're the type of team that creates those opportunities because they're always there on the spot and they've got a lot of very electric players. So it's down to me, underestimating Brisbane. Like the others who are still there, like Paddy Carrigan, I believe, leads the league in meters. This is one of the form players in the whole comp. But I'm looking at this team that's like Jock Madden slotted in there. You've got Jensen and Baker, your front row, Hunt in the second row. But these guys are all stepping up. It doesn't matter who's in the jersey. So I have to give a lot of credit to Kevy. There's no grand final hangover really present in this team. They look like they can be just as good this year because as someone else commented, imagine what this team will be once Payne Haas and Reynolds comes back in. You can't deny that. And it's burned me going against Brisbane 3 weeks in a row. And that capped a Saturday where normal service kind of resumed because all the favourites did get up.
So with their returns, I think you've also got to include Brendan Piakura and Dean Mariner, who would replace Corey Oates. So there's even more firepower to come back this way. Reece Walsh, 2 tries, 3 line breaks. You mentioned it. The confidence he plays with in the wet weather conditions, albeit, was just incredible in this one. And the Broncos really jump on the back of it and grow in belief. But like, I'll be completely honest. When it started raining before this game at Suncorp, if I was on the Broncos at the minus line and you gave me a chance to change it to the Raiders with a head start, I would have. Because as you said, we only glossed over it, but it's a really important factor. The wet absolutely suits the Raiders. Absolutely it does, with their powerful forward pack of Papali'i, Tarpany, Hudson Young, etc. So for the Broncos to do this with a 24-point margin is genuinely impressive, and another big feather in their cap as they look towards bigger things this year, you'd think. All right, let's go to the Sunday games that we all just saw today. The Bulldogs defeat the Knights 36 points to 12. The line was set at -1.5 against the Knights when we previewed. I believe that switched the other way to -1.5 doggies by the time there was kickoff. Look, the Bulldogs have put in so much effort these past few weeks. They just lost to the Bunnies. They get a win over the Roosters, which was, maybe a lot of effort for the first half there. They go down to the Storm in devastating conditions. And then this week, the Knights just were slightly off. And because the Bulldogs are coming at them with so much effort and energy, and every tackle is 100%, and they weren't without adversity. Again, they lost a prop forward very early in this game, like they have at other stages this year, but they caught the Knights off. Maybe it was the Knights' late changes to their lineup. Maybe it was an attitude thing, thinking that they'd roll the Bulldogs again, given they won 106-4 against them in their 2 games last year. I'm not sure, but they were noticeably off, and the Bulldogs just took full advantage of it. Now, in the preview show, I did predict the Knights. I said I'm making that prediction based off an Adam O'Brien press conference, which if you listen to this show regularly, you know there's some serious GST added to some of the excuses and stuff he comes up with. But my dog is such a good boy. He started barking in the background. I said, stuff it, that's an omen. I'm going on the doggies now. So my dog is definitely a good boy. And if my dog does bark in any future Bulldogs games, that is certainly a factor we are going to have to consider, because the doggies were awesome today. And it was probably their best game that they've played in a while. How do you sum this one up, mate? It was a disaster for the Knights and probably made worse by the injury of Kalen Ponga's foot as well.
Let's start with Adam O'Brien, because after the Roosters, he came into the press conference and he talked to a lot of people into Newcastle and said, look, I know it sounds like excuses, but my boys are tired. My boys are tired. We have not had proper training sessions to get better. Now, we have a nice long turnaround. We're going to get several quality training sessions where we can actually improve the team, and we can be so much better, 9 days from now, 9 or 10 days from now. So I actually, because, that game only finished a couple of hours ago and then straight to Sharks Cowboys, I haven't listened to his press conference today. So as Dan comments, another week of AOB excuses. I love to hear what his excuses are today. Now, look, part of the reason I played the Dogs and I really liked them, was revenge for particularly that 66-0 thrashing last year, but also KP coming into the game with an injury. Now, in fairness, it's a different injury that flared up. Is that what we're led to believe? Like it wasn't the hip at all. They said
the hip pointer was a factor. They said the hip pointer was a factor, but it was mainly a foot injury is why he's off, and he was in a moon boot.
Did they say when that happened, or he carried it into the game? Like I didn't notice it when it happened, so I kind of knew that he was labouring, and then it was a combination of KP couldn't run properly, and the game was getting away from Newcastle. So the smart thing was to pull him off. The Dogs also just looked so determined, and after, you're right, putting in a great fight multiple weeks and, just getting the reward in one of 3 close games, this one wasn't close. I think the key moment is the Dogs are up 12-0, but the Knights get an opportunity, do cut it to 12-6. However, Marzu drops it first tackle and the Dogs score, and it's Bronson Cherry scoring. So for 18-6, I felt like the Dogs never looked like getting beaten after that. That was just before halftime, and that was the lead they took in a halftime. But that was special for me because my Winnie's Kitchen, I did have a cherry on top there. So cherry to get a try, and the Dogs to cover even a slight alt line to really juice up our odds of $9. So that was really nice. Over 200 people copied me on Dabble with that one as well. But, you watch that game today. Now, you tell me, are the Knights better than the Dogs? Because most people would have said yes coming into the game. And I don't believe that's the case. I had the Dogs finishing higher than Newcastle on the ladder this year. I kind of feel like they're a more talented side that can really build on positive vibes and energy this year because they know they can compete with teams. Like now there's a few more quality players in there, led by Crichton, who now leads the club. It just builds everyone else's confidence up. And so guys that have been downtrodden in the past can have better seasons. And they're not perfect. And I still don't know if Hutchison's the right 7. I'm sure they'll figure that out at some point down the line. But the other thing about Newcastle is, is it too harsh to just call them a one-man team? Because other teams have made up for it when star players have been out. Like we talk about Brisbane, Walsh is out, next man up, and other players can step up. But when Ponga can't go for Newcastle, they're really toothless. So I don't know if I'm being too harsh there, but I'm thankful because we got a best bet up very easily to avoid the reverse sweep. Got the same game up, but I'm sorry, I don't think I mentioned as well, which I meant to because I'm not trying to hide from it. The mixed matchup did also lose the night before, Brisbane scoring more than Para. Para never put up enough for us in Darwin. But I wanted to mention that just because it was a horrible weekend for me. That's the truth of it. People will give me lots of grief, but trust me, I'll be just as hard on myself too. It doesn't matter how long I've done this. I lose sleep over it, having bad runs. So this game just gave me something, a little bit of confidence and positivity back, which I can take into round 8.
Yeah, a little bit of joy or a little bit of relief rather to finish.
And you've got to enjoy it too. It's not. I know it's easy when you win. It kind of feel easy, but it's not easy. And that's the second, long shot same gamer that I've got up in just 7 rounds, including 2 that have pushed as well for money back. So only 4 losses on those and 2 wins at 11 and 9. It's not all doom and gloom. People love their same gamers. You have to be loving what I've been cooking up in the kitchen this year.
And I think for this game, what made me so confident on the Bulldogs before kickoff was your point in the pre-game show of it's about, I kind of used, when I was saying the Knights should win, I was using it, those results last year as my evidence why. And you were using the opposite. You're saying, well, that's a reason to motivate the Bulldogs. And we often talk on this show about how you can, warp stats to your own perception, to the way you want it to sound. But in terms of picking the reverse side of games, that's something you've typically been very good at. None better last year when you picked the Tigers to smash the Cowboys, and then you picked the Cowboys to give them revenge. Nailed both of those. Nailed this one as well, realistically, in terms of, aside coming back, they lost 66-0 last year, and they come out today and get a 24-point margin victory. So nice job there by the Doggies. Final game of the round that we all just watched, it was the Sharks defeating the Cowboys. The line was set at -3.5 against the Sharkies coming into this. In the end, they don't need any such line. They thumped the Cowboys 42 points to 6, and Cowboys were noticeably off this week. The side that showed up against the Eels last week was off as well. It's the same form that they've carried into this game, and the Sharks have now won their last 10 regular season games over the Cowboys consecutively. In terms of technical analysis or comment or opinion on this game, what can anyone say? The Cowboys were just appalling, and the Sharks are a side that lost a finals game to the Cowboys at this venue only 2 years ago. So if we're going to use that as a measure of success, they have absolutely improved as a football side. And I think that is somewhat of a fair measure because at that point, the Cowboys were a stronger side, but the Sharkies have evolved since then. They're playing more attacking footy this year. They're a better side this year from what we've seen so far, really, besides that slip up against the Tigers. So I think that's another little success factor there for the Sharkies. And if they continue to roll over these small wins, by the time September rolls around, although they're yet to record a finals win in something like 4 or 5 seasons, I think they could still fit into the contenders category this year. The Cowboys, this is a tough one, Winnie, because they need to cut out the silly errors, particularly in their own end. But what makes this Cowboys side so special and so good, when we saw against the Dolphins, and we've seen in other games this year, maybe the Titans for another example, it is their potent attack and the fact they can create opportunities from everywhere. But the facts are, when you verse hard teams like the Sharks and you're in a finals game, for example, you cannot rely on gambles and rolling the dice with attack that has risks involved with it. You got to play a safer brand of footy. Now, the Cowboys didn't come with any style of safe footy tonight. They got stuck in first gear. They completely froze because they just gave up silly errors in their own end. And so it's something the Cowboys need to work on, where they get settled into a game and feel the momentum and the groove of the game, before throwing the footy around so much. Like, fair enough. If you're versing the Eels in the second half of Darwin and you're the Cowboys, for an example, for a team this week, throw that footy around off the kickoff for all you care, with how that was. But in a tough arm wrestle, like, come on, Cowboys, you've got to use some IQ. And they do have a super smart spine, so I'm not sure what's going wrong this year. I don't know what to think of the Cowboys. You could still say they're contenders, and you could just as easily say they're pretenders. So I'm interested, how do you view the Cowboys after this game, and what did you make of this game?
Yeah, because the Cowboys were off a loss in Sydney last week too, so all the more reason to be dialed in. And if they weren't up for Drinky's 100th game, they should have been up for Drinky's 100th game for the club, but he threw away the first try, forcing a ball, as you say, in their own half, and the Sharkies rolled him after that. I mean, it was 24-0 at halftime, and these are my least favourite type of games because it's not a contest, and I don't feel like you learn a lot out of sides because any team can get ahead of steam and any team can just get trampled and it's kind of game over. And like the perfect example is when it wasn't Cronulla's night and they met a Tigers team that was just up and about, it was the Sharks getting beat by 30. But as we stand now after 7 rounds, Cronulla's top of the ladder, right? I feel like I'm blanking. Has Cronulla lost another game? Or that is the only loss?
Just the Tigers lost.
Right, yeah, and they've had a bye. So the Sharks are as good as anybody in what they've shown. But for the Cowboys, it's pretty simple to me. They're a very potent attacking team that doesn't like to defend. And if they can figure out how to defend and stop sides, they are still a top 4 caliber team. And it's crazy to say, if they can figure out how to defend, but we have seen it because 2 years ago, that team was defense first and was strangling opponents and was so fit and the line speed was incredible and nobody could even score a try against Cowboys second half. You recall the year that they got all the way up to, I think, 3rd on the ladder, right? Yeah, and beat the Sharks in extra time in the first week of the finals.
Yeah.
So where's that defense? Because they let in about 29 last week against Para and even worse this week. And I mean, the last thing I thought of was this was kind of the Sharks performance I was expecting last week. I thought we'd get a really easy win over Souths. And people might have seen in the group, I tipped Cronulla 51 plus over Souths. And it was like 126 to 1, like just for a value play because Souths had already like nearly lost by 40 or so to Roosters and lost by 30 plus to New Zealand. They'd given up on JD. Like the Sharks are that type of bully that could have done it. And obviously people tell you that you're stupid for making a bet like that, but it's 126 to 1. But I thought, don't tell me they're going to win 50 plus this week. If Val Holmes didn't score late, maybe the barrage would have continued. And I mentioned Val Holmes because go and check out the multi on the TryPod page. It's not mine, unfortunately, but it was sent to me. Someone had a multi, 8-leg multi, all try scorers in the final leg. It was 1,400 to 1, 1,400 to 1, and the person had a tenner on it. And the final leg was Val Holmes. And when I saw this multi, it was like 30-0 Cronulla. But I don't even know if North Queensland will score any time. And as it happens, they do get one off a kick in behind. It's Val, and that person, bags are on that person tonight for sure.
Yeah, so, oh my God, if you're that person, your heart would have been racing for that moment. That would have been awesome to watch Holmes because it wasn't even like a spectacular try. He kind of just picked up the ball and, chased a grubber through and fell over the line. But yeah, for the Cowboys, I don't know who they've got next week, but they need to reset hard. And I'm going to say for their sake, I hope they're at home in Townsville to do so. And final point on the Cowboys winning, like this is a side that in Townsville, while they're full strength, I could genuinely come up with a reason and tip them against anybody. If they were to finish 3rd or above on the ladder or 3rd or 1st and get that home final, like dead set, they could win that, go straight to the next week in Townsville, win that, and then only have to win one game in Sydney to go all the way. But you just don't see the Cowboys finishing top 4 with their inconsistency so far this year. So that will really hurt them playing finals games in Sydney when we know they're poor in Sydney and regular season games with much less weight to them. All right, anything
Max wants us to talk about the sin bin. Which sin bin are you talking about, Max? Are we talking about Hetherington and Reed Marnie getting sent at the ends of Knights Dogs and then Hetherington squaring up in the tunnel? Well, there'll be more made of that this week. What else do you want us to say? Look, NBA playoffs are upon us. We did a preview for that. I did that with Tuller, the resident NBA expert. The playoffs just kicked off today, but I gave it a couple of futures plays. If you are interested, you'll find that on the TryPod YouTube page as well as our Facebook page if you like your NBA. Anything else from you, Clarkey, or we'll wrap it and we'll be back in a couple of days.
Yep, nothing from myself. Thank you very much for being here with us tonight, guys. We will see you Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. to preview Anzac round and hand out some more best bets. Have a great night, TryPod family, and over to you, Winnie, for those famous last words.
Hey, guys, have a great night. Have a great start to your week, and see you next Tuesday. Lego.